My stepsister did something absolutely unforgivable. She blacklisted me from my own father's funeral, and I have no words to say to her. I only have a word to say to myself. Revenge. I'm 32 years old and male. I've never had to feel some other type of way for my dad. He's 60. Not hate, not anger, because I know Mom would not want that if she was here. She was a very kind soul, and sometimes I wonder how she even did it. I usually pray to have her kind of spirit because of the way it shone so brightly around people she was around. But now she's gone, and I can't say that I've fully gotten over her absence, even though it's been years since she left us. However, for my dad, her death did not stop him from exploring life without her. After 5 to 6 months of her death, my dad was already on to the next woman. That was mostly where my anger stemmed from, the fact that he didn't even give it some time before replacing her. I was 24 at the time and had just finished college and had a part-time job. I decided to leave home and move to my own place since I couldn't stand a stranger replacing my mother and having her children in a home where I grew up with Mom. Since my part-time job could not rent me a house at the time, I moved in with my best friend, who we're going to call Mark. My younger brother was 20 and still living off my dad since we were actually well off. He actually hoped to move out after college too, and that's exactly what he did. He moved in with me when I had finally secured my own place, and my dad wasn't exactly happy about the sudden changes. But he didn't also give us time to adjust to the change that he'd brought upon us when he remarried almost right after his wife's death. One thing that I don't fully understand to this day is why he did what he did. He really loved Mom, it was so obvious, and I admired their love so much when I was younger that I prayed to have something like that when I grew older. So, let's say I've just been living life since then. I've only had 3 girlfriends and they've never met my father. In fact, 2 of them actually thought he was dead, or we weren't on speaking terms since I never even talked about him once. But the truth is that we weren't keeping any sort of malice or something. I just wasn't as close to him as I was before. We spoke on my birthday, and he always called to wish me well on my day, but that was it. Even when I acquired my master's, I didn't tell him about it. He wasn't even aware that I decided to pursue it. So, while we may not have the usual dad-son relationship, I still respected him very much, and we spoke during important events. So that's about it. However, one of my stepsisters really got on my nerves. Sometimes when I would call him, actually the home phone which he usually kept in his office, she would pick up the call and tell me that he wasn't even here when he was. At first, I did not pay her any attention since it looked like that's what she wanted, but then she began to do too much. It just became so annoying, it made me realize the main reason I'd almost severed ties with my father in the first place. So, I stopped checking up on him during that period. He noticed and asked what was wrong. It was then I told him that what his stepdaughter had been doing, that I found out that he'd always been around during those times when I wanted to speak to him. After that, he banned her from picking up the phone, and she got mad at me. She secretly took my call line from Dad and cursed me out. I received an unexpected call that particular day from an unsaved number, and when I heard her voice, I instantly knew it was her and that she had come to cause trouble, so I just hung up before she could even finish with her drama. It seemed like she did not like the fact that I hung up on her, though, but she could not obviously do anything about it since I literally had no business with her. I only called home to check up on my father and sometimes his wife. It's not like I wanted to stay on bad terms with my stepsister or that I even really hated her. Really, I didn't. The problem was her and her entitled personality. I was 100% positive that my dad also had a problem with her behavior since he wasn't exactly used to that. My mom was a strict yet loving woman, so we got the necessary home training we needed from both my parents. So yeah, I wasn't much of a deviant during my teenage years. That was probably why I was my dad's favorite son. When I think of those good times growing up, I wish my dad had never remarried. Then we would still be as close as ever, but that would be pretty selfish of me because everyone deserves happiness and love, right? I could not possibly keep that away from him because of my own selfishness. However, my stepmom did not exactly accept us. The first few days I spent with her, she acted like, well, I and my brother, did not even exist. Only talked to her own children.
Imagine feeling left out immediately after meeting your new mother. I especially felt bad for my younger brother since he was only 20 at the time. Anyways, I'll stop blaming anyone for the dislike I have for my distant family.
What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. So today's story is a very interesting one. It was written in a diary format, which is multiple mini updates. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. This story is about to get wild. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito, and if you want to see more videos like this, just click the subscribe button because I drop a video every single day. And here is update number 1. So, my dad and I are not as distant as we used to be. We're slowly starting to get closer to each other, and I was calling him not only on my birthdays. It wasn't so much of a change compared to how we used to be back in the days, but it was something at least, and I was happy about it. The growth was slow but worth it. I gradually began opening up to him, and my younger brother eventually came through too. Actually, before that, they weren't even on speaking terms, but they're cool now. Thanks to me. Half thanks to me, actually, since it was my brother that asked me to speak to him one day when my dad and I, were on the phone. So yeah, right now, our once dysfunctional family is not so dysfunctional as it used to be. But my stepsister, she's still not happy about it at all. Surprisingly, she's always looking for a way to get a hold of me so she can curse me out and shove her money, my dad's money, into my face. And honestly, I'm not even broke. Well, I'm obviously not on my dad's level of wealth yet, since that's going to take a lot of years of hard work, but give me time. So, she didn't like it one bit when I slowly began to mend our dad and I relationship together. Her siblings too did not seem to like the fact that since they believed that sooner or later my dad would want to resume sending me money for upkeep. Yeah, my dad would actually spoil a 30-year-old man, especially if you let him, but I've denied his money for a very long time. And since we're now on better terms, it's only normal for them to fear that fact since it would mean less money for them. Although Dad's not like that. He'll definitely keep his love strong for them. If they had any sense, they would know that you don't necessarily need to stop loving someone or love someone less in order to love someone else. But with the characters of these people I call my stepfamily, I'm not so surprised by their mentality. Well, all their plans obviously did not work because my dad and I kept constant contact with each other. I don't even know why they're all so fixed on my dad's money. If they decided to go out and find a job, honestly, it wouldn't be that hard because of their connections that my dad has in so many places. But no, they all want to sit around and wait for Dad to pamper them with his hard-earned money. It shouldn't bother me, but it does. I wonder why he even does it. Those are fully grown adults that need a job and not living off their stepfather's money. So, I just found out something pretty heartbreaking. Actually, I've suspected it for a while. Especially since my dad and I recently got closer, talked more on the phone, and even met during the holidays. Although my brother and I usually spent the holidays in some of his penthouses closer to where I live, since I live days away from where he and stepmom lives with her children. Now that I think about this, I wonder why I have to move so far away from them. I wonder if I really hated my dad then, and if it showed really bad. At least, I hope it didn't, since I wouldn't have wanted my dad to feel bad about something natural. The current issue now is that for some time, I found out that my dad's been sick. Well, I happen to know one cold winter morning during one of our many phone calls, he was sounding so down like he sounded the week before. When I asked, he said that he caught a cold, but then it just kept getting worse, and it didn't even sound like a cold anymore. I told him that he could talk to me about anything and that I'll always be there for him. Even though I wasn't in the past few years, I'll make it up for him with so much joy in my heart. That was when he told me he has cancer and has only been surviving these past few months. I was shocked. We just started talking for him to leave me early. Honestly, it was a really painful moment for me at the time, but I thought about how he was probably feeling, so I just decided to be there for him since I really couldn't do much. We spent the rest of our days getting closer and bonding, and it was one of the best times I've shared with him since after my mom's death. I also got to find out that his family, my stepmom and her children, didn't really bother helping or showing any sympathy to him, so
He decides to stay at some other place when he hired a private nurse to live the rest of his life. I felt so angry at them. But honestly, this is something anyone would have expected from those monsters he called family. I offered to come down to his location and, well, just be there for him, but he refused, saying that he's very much happy just keeping constant contact with me. He later told me that they, his family, eventually came through for him, asking him to move back in so they can do right by him. But I suspected they just realized that if he dies, there's a chance of them taking a huge portion of his will, since they cared for him so diligently when he was alive. I was going to advise him to refuse their offer and just remain where he was, but at times like that, one needed to be close with the people they loved the most. Something deep down told me that the person was me. But what do I know? I really only just want the best for him and want him to be extremely happy and grateful during this point in his life. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. So update 2 is coming out right now. This is turning into a pretty sad story, but things are about to get a lot worse. Here we go. Update number 2. So, I just heard some really bad news. My dad died early this morning in the family home. I have mixed feelings about it. I feel a lot sadder than I thought I would. Really, what do I do now? I literally don't have any living parent figures left, and if you don't count my stepmom, and I've never accepted her as a stepmom, so that doesn't even count anyways. I just really hope that his last moments weren't hard for me, and I really hope he knew that he felt genuinely loved. By I, and my brother at least. I've always suspected my stepmom and her children that they've always acted like they were only with him for his money. Anyways, I guess I'll never be able to ask what was going through his mind when he took a new wife 5 months after Mother's death. But honestly, I had so many opportunities to ask him, but I didn't want to open up a closed wound. So I decided not to. I guess I have to grow up and let go of all the things I can't control, especially the decisions of an elderly man, my father. I sincerely hope for the best for him, wherever he is now. The new week was hard for me. I was simply just letting it live. Getting all depressed and sad about Dad's passing wasn't something I thought would hold for so long, but it did. Other than that, I needed to find out what my stepmom was planning for his funeral. I tried calling my other stepsister, but she didn't pick up the phone. Her sister might have probably told her not to pick up any phone calls from me, so I called their mother. And she told me about the already fixed burial date, and then she asked why I sounded so moody on the phone. I mean, I don't know. My dad just died. What were you really expecting? Before I could answer, she said this. It's not like you were even here for him. You never even cared for him, so don't start acting funny now that he's gone. Well, I didn't know what to say to that. In fact, I knew that I did not need to respond to something like that. It's just like someone telling you that you have a long tail behind you, and you don't, but the person keeps insisting the tail's there. At this point, you just let them think what they think. I ended the phone call and told myself I would not be speaking to that manic woman in a long time. The only reason I'd even called was to find out about my dad's burial. Why else would I have decided to pick up the phone and dial her number? After I ended the call, I realized that I had earlier planned to ask for a means to contribute towards his burial. How could I bring myself to call this woman for a second time? I gulped and swallowed my pride and picked up that telephone again. This time she picked up on the first ring and shouted, "What?" right in my ears. I told her that I wanted to contribute towards the planning of my dad's funeral, and she scoffed. "What do you think that change of yours can do for my husband? Ha! I can't even believe you asked this of me. You should probably use that money you're asking to contribute to go fix up your miserable life." And then she ended the call without even allowing me to respond. I wonder how my dad kept up with her when he was alive. I do really wonder. And by the way, who even said I was broke? I suspect it's her first daughter who started spreading that useless rumor. I'm honestly doing great for a 32-year-old male. These people are definitely lying to themselves over here, but it didn't matter. I could not even contribute towards my dad. Isn't this supposed to be some sort of crime? I'm literally the first child of my father, the heir. I should be able to have some rights that these people can't even touch. I mean, come on. I finally let it go. I wasn't able to give towards my dad's funeral. That was over, so I just focused on attending the funeral. His funeral date was quickly approaching, and I didn't want to be caught unaware with work and other things, and I'd already informed my boss about the dates. And my employees in my startup business, of course. I was going to be away for a few days. I wasn't sure how long it would take since my dad's residence was very far from where I lived, but I took a week off just in case. By now, I'd already informed my brother of his death, and he wanted to also attend the funeral. We decided to meet up at his place since he was a lot closer, yet still far from where Dad lived. I traveled the next 2 days to his place and arrived in 36 hours. When I'd finally settled, we decided to start moving in the next 2 days. The funeral was in 5 days from now. We set off on the second day, and it took us 3 days to get there. After finding our way from the scanty description my stepmom had given me earlier, we finally arrived at the funeral venue, and we were shocked at the situation there. Update number 3. Would you guys believe that we weren't allowed to go into the venue? For whatever reason. We stood outside for like 20 minutes, arguing and begging with the security operatives who were put in charge of the entrance of guests, since it was more of a private funeral with few close family and friends. I couldn't believe that this was really happening. Who would have blocked us from having access to our own father's funeral? Then I realized I couldn't have been anybody more than my stepmom and her children. When I asked who directed them, they refused to tell me who, but 1 hour into standing outside, my evil stepsister called one of them and asked, "How's it going over there?" The security operatives holding us off, and they said it was going well. I managed to hear her voice and finally confirmed that she was truly behind this. I wasn't happy one bit and was even angry at the development of things. She joined a new family. We tried to accept her, but she never reciprocated the efforts towards us. And now she's locking us out of Dad's funeral? Okay, now I'm mad. I took out my cell phone and started making calls to relatives and some of the influences I've managed to have through my father. It was then that I found out that my stepsister, who had also blocked access to Mom's side of the family, they weren't invited and weren't allowed in either. By now, the funeral was already over. There was nothing we could do about it. After everyone trooped off from the cemetery, we went to leave the flowers, at least, since we weren't able to attend. I ended up crying uncontrollably, but my brother and best friend were there to console me. Surprisingly, I didn't even know he, my best friend, would be there since we hadn't talked in a while since we were so busy with our individual lives. I was actually happy to see him and grateful he was there for me on a day like this. However, I was sad and annoyed with my stepfamily and hoped I never got to meet my stepsister, especially for anything later in the future, and the same goes for her. Well, 2 weeks later, I heard that my father's will would be read that day. I found out that my dad and his wife had signed a prenup, which would be read off after he died. So, his lawyer wanted us to attend. I'm sure if he hadn't informed us, my stepfamily would not have bothered to let me and my brother know. We had not yet traveled back since we decided to just have a good time in the country before going back. If we went back almost immediately, it would have almost been a waste since we didn't get to attend the funeral that we came here for in the first place. I called up my boss and colleagues at work and let them know that I'll be there for a while. So, the only thing I needed to do while I was here was let go, have fun with the closest people in my life, my brother and my best friend. The day of the will reading, well, we all got freshened up and headed out to the family home where the will was going to be read. It brought back memories, and I was definitely happy to be there. Although, the presence of my stepfamily made it so obvious that it had changed so much after all these years that I had not been there. Immediately, we stepped in. My stepsister said, "What are they even doing here? Did you miss your way or something?" Oh, I say this. I'm sure we didn't. It's obvious, isn't it? We're real family. She gave me an irritated face and said, "Whatever, do what you want. Just don't cause any trouble while you're here, and don't get in the way of anything." Her mom and siblings laughed at that and continued with their business. They made me think, why was I even here? But I wasn't about to let these people cloud my thoughts with such negativity. My dad was my hero growing up, and he was my family. No matter how different it was from the usual family, he was my dad, and I would not miss his will reading after they've already made me miss his burial. I sat down confidently at the round table and looked towards the lawyer. He gave me a little smile, shook my hand, and said this. So, I hear you're the first son of Mr. This and That. I said, yeah, and he told me to keep being real and carry on my father's name. I didn't understood what that meant, but it did not put too much meaning into it after he greeted my stepfamily almost the same way. But I noticed he greeted me much warmer. It seemed like he had an idea on my stepfamily's evil plan about Dad, just taking from him without giving. Well, we all settled down for the will reading and everything went silent. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading out the contents of the will. After he was done, everyone's mouths were wide open, jaws on the floor. Nobody expected this. I had tears running down my eyes. What the heck was my old man thinking? According to the will, he gave me the right to control his trust fund, where 80% of his assets and investments were placed. The remaining 20% were shared between my stepmom and my best friend. Who would have expected this? My dad truly is unpredictable. I wonder what was going through his mind when he wrote out his will. I wasn't complaining, though. I couldn't imagine 80% of all these valuable possessions going to my stepfamily. They would have squandered my dad's name and years of hard work without thinking it through. My brother, my best friend, and I shared a big hug and congratulated each other. I still couldn't believe that my dad has entrusted this much to my name. It was simply unbelievable. My stepmother shot up from her seat and started screaming, "How could he do this to me? The betrayal! How could he?" She started crying loudly and fell to the floor. Her children went to her side to console her, and my stepsister, the one I've got some serious issues with, kept looking back at me. At this point, I think we should just call her Lena. That's too beautiful of a name for her, but for privacy's sake, okay? I couldn't stand all the ruckus going on in the room, so I stood up and asked my brother and my best friend to excuse ourselves from the room. We walked out, and a minute later, I saw Lena running towards me. She was breathless by the time she caught up with me, so she placed a hand on my shoulder to catch her breath. I pushed her nasty hands off. I wonder what it was that she wanted this time, or what drama she was trying to pull off after one that I just experienced in the room with her mom. Lena says this. Hey, you walk really fast, you know. You almost disappeared there. So, are you guys headed back to the hotel, or where are you guys staying? I never told her where we were staying, so how did she know we were staying at a hotel? This girl is pretty weird. I said nothing again. I know you're probably wary of me because of our past, but why don't we just get along? Now, I knew what this cunning little girl was up to. I shook her hand and smiled at her, then I said this. I know exactly what it is you want, but to avoid wasting both of our times, Lena, I'll tell you now, you're not getting a pinch of my inheritance. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So this story took a turn that I did not see coming. 80% of wealth? Anyways, there's one final update, update number 4. We're going to jump into that now. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. I read stories every single day. If that's something you're into, consider subscribing. And let's hop into the final update, shall we? Unsurprisingly, or maybe surprisingly, I should say, Lena did not give up on her quest to get me my favor. She kept calling me even after that day. It took quite a while for me to finalize this decision, but I decided to relocate to the country I've spent most of my life in. I informed my friends and colleagues in my former country of residence, and while they were sad that I was leaving, they wished me the very best. By the time I was done with the whole moving process, making plans and finalizing some deals, it was already a week past the day that the will was read. My brother and best friend also agreed to live in that same country, and after persuading them to stay with me in our family house, they agreed. I chased my stepfamily out of the home, but I was generous enough to give them my former home in my former country of residence. But my stepmom was mad, I'll tell ya. She said she would never end up there and tried to bully me into giving her my dad's home. But I wasn't even ready for her drama, so I threatened to involve the police if she crossed her boundaries, and well, she backed off pretty quickly after that threat. By now, Lena was still on my neck for a bit of inheritance and was acting too nice. It was tiring, honestly. She even apologized once, saying that it was all because of her marriage preparations that she was careless of our relationship. and that she should have valued it more. Wait, first of all, there wasn't really a relationship. You're just a stepsister that I never even accepted. Anyways, I wasn't hearing any of this, so I kept telling her off and did not change my mind about not giving her anything from the inheritance given to my dad. I guess that got her pretty angry because she broke into my dad's house one day. I hadn't yet finished with the moving process in Dad's home since my stepmom was still moving out most of her stuff. That day, Lena broke into Dad's room, which is technically mine now, and stole some expensive items and possessions that he had there. Before then, I'd placed CCTV cameras in strategic places in the house because I had a strong feeling that something of this sort might happen. I did not drag her to the police station. I wanted something that would last a long time. So I posted the video of her stealing, which was caught on CCTV camera, to her friends group on social media. It made a huge impact, and someone from the group secretly shared the video to the public. I was not expecting an outcome to be like this, but I don't regret it. Her friends saw the video and were really embarrassed, so they distanced themselves from her so people don't brand them as thieves too. Her mom and fiancé came across the video and made some really drastic moves too. Her mom, who had always put her image first, wasn't ready for Lena to spoil it because of her careless actions. So, she disowned her immediately the video surfaced, and her fiancé, on the other hand, called off the wedding and cut all ties with her. Honestly, if you ask me, this was nothing compared to her making me miss my dad's funeral. I don't think I'd ever forgive that. So, this kinda gave me a peace of mind that I've been searching for since then. I don't know, maybe a sort of revenge. I hope she gets to fully face the consequences of her actions. And again, I don't regret it one bit.
Alright guys, this was absolutely a crazy story. In my opinion though, the worst character was Lena. Lena was the one who basically said, "You're not coming to this funeral," and then she was caught later on CCTV stealing. I'm glad the family cut her off, but that whole step-family side was so toxic. I felt bad for OP the entire story, but guys, let me know your thoughts about it. What would you do if you were in OP's unique position and you're trying to get closer to your father and then all of a sudden the step-family's just pushing you away? Let me know your thoughts, drop them in the comment section, tell me exactly what you would do. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's story. I hope you loved this saga story. If you did, just know the best way to support me is smashing that subscribe button. And don't forget to press the like, guys. Thank you once again. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.